She never owned a scale. He packed the same lunch for 12 years, and somehow they both stayed lean without ever thinking about it. Back in the 1960s, people ate bacon for breakfast and roast beef for dinner, yet rarely struggled with weight. They didn't diet, they didn't snack, they simply lived differently. Let's count down 13 diet secrets from a time when staying slim wasn't a struggle. It was just life. Number 13, they never snacked between meals. In the 1960s, the idea of snacking between meals felt unnecessary. Food wasn't always within reach, and more importantly, it wasn't on your mind all the time. You ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that was it. Between those times, the kitchen wasn't just closed in theory, it was closed in spirit. No one wandered in for a handful of crackers or a spoonful of peanut butter. Kids came home from school hungry, sure, but even then, any snack was modest and deliberate. A couple of graham crackers and a glass of milk, maybe a slice of apple, and always under a watchful eye. No bottomless snack packs, no grab whatever you want. Snacks were something you were given, not something you took. Most homes didn't stock snack foods the way we do today. Chips were a weekend treat. Candy belonged to holidays or the rare visit to the five and dime. There were no endless rows of snack aisles in the grocery store. Doritos didn't even exist until the mid-60s. If you had them, they were for parties, not Tuesday afternoons. And that's what made food feel special. When meals weren't interrupted by constant grazing, you actually looked forward to them. You arrived at the table with a real appetite, and that made dinner more satisfying, not just physically, but emotionally. Eating was an experience, not background noise in the day. We didn't need to count calories back then, because the rhythm of the day did it for us. Hunger came and went like clockwork, and because snacking wasn't habitual, overeating wasn't either. You ate when it was time to eat, and that simple structure kept things in balance. Today we've normalized constant access to food, but back then, eating had boundaries. And those boundaries weren't restrictive, they were comforting. They taught us patience, gratitude, and how to really enjoy a meal when it finally came. Number 12, portions were shockingly small. Walk into a diner in 1963, and the first thing you'd notice wasn't the decor, it was the food. A hamburger was the size of your palm. Fries came in one size and it looked like today's kids' meal. A soda, just 8 ounces, in a glass bottle you could finish in 3 sips. Still, no one walked away hungry. At home, it was the same story. Dinner plates measured 9 inches across, smaller than today's. But when Mom filled it with roast beef, mashed potatoes, and green beans, it looked full. And that feeling of seeing a full plate mattered. Your eyes told your brain, this is enough. Snacks were modest too. A bag of chips was 1 ounce. Candy bars were smaller. Ice cream came in a pint, and the whole family shared. At the movies, a large popcorn meant 5 cups. Today's version holds 4 times that, and it's all for one person. But more than the size, it was the mindset. Seconds weren't expected. You ate what was served. No one asked for more because no one needed more. You finished your plate not out of guilt, but because it made sense. Restaurants didn't pile food high to prove value. They focused on flavor. More wasn't the point. Enough was. Even packaging reminded you where the line was. 1 serving meant 1 portion, and that was enough to be satisfied. Looking back, the portions feel small, but the meals felt complete. People ate until they were full, not stuffed. And somehow eating less didn't feel like going without. It felt like balance, and that made all the difference. Number 11, everyone walked everywhere. In the 1960s, walking wasn't called exercise, it was just life. Kids walked to school, sometimes more than a mile each way. Adults walked to the corner store, to church, to visit neighbors. No one called it cardio, it was simply how you got from one place to another. Families often had only 1 car. and Dad took it to work. That meant Mom walked to the butcher, the bakery, the post office. She pushed a stroller down the sidewalk with groceries in one hand and a toddler in the other, and no one thought twice about it. Sidewalks were everywhere. Stores were smaller, scattered throughout the neighborhood, and homes were built close together. You didn't drive to pick up milk, you walked. Even the milkman walked, carrying glass bottles house to house. At home, movement didn't stop. Opening the garage meant stepping out and lifting the door by hand. Doing laundry meant hauling baskets up and down stairs. Cooking involved real effort, stirring, chopping, lifting, scrubbing. No dishwashers, no microwaves, just work. And it wasn't rushed. It was steady, gentle motion that lasted all day. Not a step-counting obsession, but a natural rhythm. You bent, reached, climbed, carried. You didn't sit for hours and then squeeze in a workout. You moved because life required it. Even leisure time was active. You walked to the park. You played ball in the street. You raked the yard, pulled weeds, washed the car. On weekends, you walked through downtown, window shopped, maybe stopped for an ice cream cone. That was your reward, and you earned it. People didn't move to lose weight. They moved because that's how things got done. And without realizing it, they burned hundreds of calories a day just by living. Looking back now, it wasn't a fitness plan, it was freedom. One step at a time. Number 10, no ultra-processed foods. After a long walk home from school, what waited wasn't a box or a wrapper. It was a warm kitchen, something bubbling on the stove, the smell of onions and broth filling the air. In the 1960s, ultra-processed food didn't exist, not the way it does now. There were no frozen meals with 20 ingredients you couldn't pronounce. No rainbow-colored breakfast bars. No plastic-wrapped cheese products with shelf lives longer than a summer. The pantry held the basics: flour, sugar, oats, real things. Milk came in a glass bottle. Meat was wrapped in butcher paper. Produce still had dirt on it. And when food came in a can, it was still just food. Green beans, tomatoes, soup, nothing loaded, nothing extreme. Cooking took time. Mom stirred the pot while the kids set the table. Dinner didn't start with opening boxes. It started with peeling, chopping, and seasoning by hand. You could taste every ingredient because there weren't many. And that's what made it good. Even treats were different. A homemade cookie meant rolling dough, using real butter, and watching the oven like a hawk. Cake wasn't from a mix, it was from scratch. And because it took effort, you didn't make it every week. It meant something. Food spoiled faster back then, and that was a good thing. Bread went stale in 2 days. Milk soured if you forgot it. So you bought only what you needed. You didn't waste. You didn't overeat. And here's what's strange. With fewer choices, meals felt richer. With simpler food, people felt fuller. Nobody talked about eating clean. They just ate real food, made in real kitchens, by real hands. Looking back, the biggest difference isn't what was missing. It's what was present: care, time, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing exactly what was on your plate because you made it yourself. Number 9, they ate on a schedule. At 5:55, you could hear your dad's footsteps in the driveway. By 6 o'clock, dinner was on the table. And if you weren't in your seat, you heard about it. In the 1960s, families didn't just eat together, they ate on time. Every single day. Breakfast wasn't something you grabbed on your way out the door. You sat down even if it was just for toast and eggs. Lunch came at noon, like clockwork, whether you were at school, on the factory floor, or working behind a desk. And when 6 o'clock rolled around, the whole household knew it was time to eat. There were no exceptions. No eating in shifts. No late-night dinners in front of the TV. You didn't wander into the kitchen at 8 p.m. looking for leftovers. The kitchen had a rhythm, and it closed when the meal ended. That structure did more than organize the day. It trained your body. You got hungry at the right times. You ate full meals. And you gave your system time to rest in between. Without realizing it, you were following what we now call intermittent fasting. But nobody used that term. It was just life. The predictability also meant fewer decisions. No asking, what should I eat every couple of hours? No grazing all day out of boredom or habit. You waited for the next meal. And when it came, it tasted better because you were ready for it. Meals had clear beginnings and endings. You sat, you ate, you talked, and then you moved on. Food didn't dominate the day, it anchored it. Looking back, it wasn't just the food that kept people balanced. It was the rhythm, the quiet discipline of eating with the clock, not against it. And in a world that moves faster than ever, maybe that's the part we've truly lost. Number 8, everyone packed their lunch. In the 1960s, bringing your own lunch wasn't just normal, it was expected. Kids carried metal lunch boxes with cartoon characters on the front and a thermos inside. Dads took their lunch pails to the job site or factory floor. Even office workers often brought a brown paper bag with a sandwich, an apple, and maybe a homemade cookie. Buying lunch every day just wasn't part of the culture. Fast food was still a novelty. School cafeterias existed, but many families preferred to send food from home. It was cheaper, yes, but it was also personal. You knew exactly what you were eating because someone who cared about you made it. Lunches were simple: a ham and cheese sandwich on white bread, a boiled egg, a few carrot sticks or a piece of fruit, maybe a thermos of soup on a cold day. No chips, no soda, no plastic-wrapped snacks with a list of ingredients a mile long. And yet, no one felt like they were missing out. Packing lunch also meant portion control without thinking about it. You had one sandwich, one apple, one cookie. That was lunch. There were no seconds, no vending machines, and no oversized combos. And because it came from home, there was a sense of rhythm to it. Something steady and familiar in the middle of a busy day. Even the act of packing lunch taught something. It required planning, intention, and care. You didn't throw it together at the last minute. Moms got up early to slice bread and wrap sandwiches in wax paper. Some even left little notes tucked inside. There was pride in a good lunch, both in making it and in eating it. It didn't need to be fancy. It just needed to be yours. And somehow those small, handmade meals carried more than just food. They carried love, structure, and a quiet kind of balance we could all use a little more of today. Number 7, they cooked everything from scratch. In a 1960s kitchen, almost nothing came ready-made. Dinner didn't start with tearing open a box. It started with a cutting board and a pot on the stove. Meals were built from real ingredients: potatoes you peeled, onions you chopped, meat you trimmed yourself. Recipes lived in your head or on index cards, passed down from mom or clipped from the local newspaper. The average housewife spent over 2 hours a day cooking. That might sound exhausting now, but back then, it was just part of the rhythm. Breakfast meant eggs cracked into a skillet and toast buttered while still warm. Lunch might be leftover meatloaf or a sandwich with slices cut from a roast made the night before. And dinner? That was a full affair. Chicken baked with carrots and potatoes, or spaghetti sauce that simmered for hours. Even quick meals still took effort. Macaroni and cheese came from a stovetop, not a microwave. Salad dressing was shaken up in a jar, just oil, vinegar, and herbs. Dessert was something you made on Saturday and stretched through the week. Because food took time, it meant more. You respected it. You didn't throw it away, and you didn't overeat, because you knew how much work had gone into making it. A batch of cookies wasn't something you snacked on absent-mindedly. It was something you waited for, because it came with the smell of vanilla and the sound of the oven ticking. Cooking from scratch also gave you control. No hidden sugars, no preservatives, no artificial flavors. What went into your food was what you put there. Simple, honest, real, and maybe most important of all, it brought people together. Someone stirred while someone else set the table. You talked while you cooked. And when it was time to eat, you appreciated every bite. Because when a meal comes from your hands, it feeds more than just your stomach. Number 6, sugar was an occasional treat. In the 1960s, sugar wasn't everywhere. It was special. You didn't have candy in your backpack, soda in the fridge, or cookies on the counter at all times. Instead, sugar came out for birthdays, holidays, or Sunday dessert. And that made it something to look forward to. Kids might get a small bag of penny candy on a trip to the corner store, or a scoop of ice cream after dinner if they finished their vegetables. Cereal in the morning wasn't dessert in disguise. It was plain corn flakes or Cheerios, maybe with a teaspoon of sugar sprinkled on top. Even soda was a treat, a 6.5-ounce glass bottle, maybe once a week, never something you drank with every meal. At home, sweet things were usually homemade. Cookies were rolled, shaped, and baked, not torn from a package. Pies were made with real fruit, and a crust you had to chill and roll by hand. Because it took effort, sweets were rare, and they were appreciated. Adults weren't snacking on pastries at their desks or grabbing sugary lattes on the go. Coffee was black or with a splash of cream. Dessert followed a full meal, not a moment of boredom. And nobody thought they needed something sweet after every meal, every day. This limited sugar wasn't about dieting or willpower. It was just how things were. Sugar wasn't hidden in spaghetti sauce or sandwich bread. Food tasted like food, and sweet things stood out because they were occasional. And maybe that's why those moments were so memorable. A slice of cake felt like a reward. A homemade brownie was something to savor. You didn't chase sweetness, you waited for it. And when it came, it was worth it. Back then, sugar was a treat, not a habit. And in that small shift, a lot of balance was found. Number 5, no 24-hour food access. In the 1960s, the kitchen had boundaries, and so did eating. There were no 24-hour diners on every corner, no drive-through windows glowing past midnight, and certainly no pantry full of snacks waiting to be raided at 2 a.m. When the kitchen closed after dinner, that was it until morning. If you felt hungry late at night, you drank a glass of water or went to bed. The idea of constant food access just didn't exist. Grocery stores closed early, restaurants weren't open around the clock, and home kitchens weren't stocked like convenience stores. You had what you needed for the week, nothing more, nothing less. Refrigerators were smaller, freezers even more so. You didn't keep 3 frozen meals just in case. You planned your shopping, you cooked what you bought, and when the food was gone, you made do until the next trip to the store. There were no food delivery apps, no vending machines in schools or offices, and no gas stations packed with snack aisles. If you wanted food, you prepared it. That took time, and that time naturally spaced out your eating. And because food wasn't available at all hours, you learned to wait. You listened to your body. Hunger came and went like any other rhythm in the day. You didn't eat just because something was nearby. You ate because it was mealtime. This structure created a natural pause between meals. It gave your body time to rest, digest, and reset. No late-night snacking, no mindless munching while watching TV. Just a clear start and stop to the eating day. Looking back, it wasn't just about what they ate. It was about when they didn't. In a world without food everywhere, all the time, people had more control. Not because they tried harder, because they didn't need to. Number 4, fresh food was the only option. In the 1960s, a trip to the grocery store felt more like a visit to the farm stand. There weren't endless aisles of frozen dinners or shelves packed with pre-cut, pre-cooked, pre-flavored everything. Food didn't come ready to eat. It came raw, real, and often still wearing a little dirt. Produce was seasonal. Strawberries arrived in June. Apples meant it was fall. If you wanted asparagus in winter, you were out of luck. And that was normal. People ate what was available, when it was available. No one expected a tomato in December to taste like anything. Meat came from the butcher, wrapped in white paper and tied with string. You told them exactly what you needed, and they cut it for you while you waited. Milk was delivered in glass bottles and left on the front porch. Bread came from the local bakery, fresh every few days, not wrapped in plastic and pumped full of preservatives. Shopping happened more often because food didn't last long. The lettuce wilted, the bread went stale, the chicken had to be cooked, and because food spoiled, people planned. They didn't overbuy, they didn't waste, and they didn't snack mindlessly because there wasn't much lying around to grab. And that freshness made a difference. Real food filled you up faster, it tasted better. You didn't need heavy sauces or added sugar to enjoy it. A tomato tasted like a tomato. A peach was sweet without help. There were no ingredient labels to decode, no hidden chemicals to look out for. You saw what you were eating because you prepared it yourself. Looking back, it wasn't fancy. It wasn't health food. It was just food, the kind that came from the ground, the dairy, or the butcher's block. And when your meals start there, it's hard to go wrong. Number 3, family dinners were sacred. At 6 o'clock sharp, something happened across American households. You came to the table, not with a phone in hand or a TV in the background, but with clean hands, an empty stomach, and the understanding that this was the most important part of the day. Dinner wasn't just about food, it was a ritual. Dad was home from work. Mom had been preparing the meal all afternoon. The table was set with real plates, cloth napkins if it was Sunday, and sometimes even the good china. Everyone had a place, and everyone showed up. No one ate in shifts, no one grabbed their food and disappeared into their room. You stayed at the table until everyone was finished, and during that time you talked about school, about work, about things that made you laugh or things that worried you. The food brought you together, but the connection kept you there. The meals themselves weren't fancy. A roast with potatoes, meatloaf and green beans, spaghetti with homemade sauce. But because they were cooked with care and shared with family, they felt like more. And somehow those meals stuck with you long after the plates were cleared. There were rules too. No interrupting, no elbows on the table, and definitely no dessert until you'd cleaned your plate. But underneath those rules was something deeper, a sense that this mattered. That being together, even for just 30 or 40 minutes, helped shape who you were. You didn't rush. You didn't eat standing up. You gave food your full attention. And in doing that, you gave each other something too. Looking back, it wasn't just about nourishment. It was about rhythm, respect, and belonging. Family dinners weren't optional. They were sacred. And in many ways, they were the heartbeat of the home. Number 2, physical work was normal. In the 1960s, staying active didn't mean going to the gym. It meant living your life. Men came home tired, not from a workout, but from a full day of physical labor. Women moved constantly, sweeping floors, carrying laundry, cooking meals from scratch, and chasing after kids. Even children burned off energy just being kids, long before screen time was something anyone had to limit. Chores weren't optional, and they weren't automated. Garage doors had to be lifted by hand. Lawns were mowed with push mowers. Laundry meant hauling baskets up and down stairs and hanging wet clothes on a line outside. No dryer buttons to press. Dishes were washed at the sink, one plate at a time. In the kitchen, everything took effort. Kneading dough, stirring batter, peeling potatoes for 6. There were no food processors or pre-sliced shortcuts, just hands, tools, and time. And after all that, there was still more to do. Yard work, home repairs, walking to the store, carrying groceries. Everything involved movement, not in bursts, but in steady daily activity that burned hundreds of calories without anyone noticing. Even leisure had motion. Families bowled, kids played tag until the streetlights came on. Weekends meant raking leaves, washing the car, or fixing what broke. There were no step counters, but people easily hit their steps just by living. And perhaps most importantly, no one thought of it as exercise. It wasn't framed as punishment or self-improvement. It was just what life required. The movement had purpose, and that made all the difference. Looking back, the calorie burn wasn't something you scheduled. It was something you earned without trying. And in a world where we now sit more than we move, it's easy to see why that quiet, everyday effort kept so many people healthy without even knowing it. Number 1, they rarely ate out. In the 1960s, eating out was a treat, something reserved for special occasions, not part of the weekly routine. Most families ate nearly every meal at home, prepared in their own kitchens, from groceries they'd chosen themselves. Going to a restaurant wasn't convenient, it was an event. Fast food was still in its infancy. McDonald's had only a few hundred locations nationwide. Pizza delivery wasn't common. Drive-thrus were rare and dining out wasn't cheap. When you did go out to eat, you dressed up. You sat at a table. You waited for your food. It wasn't quick and it wasn't casual. Even work lunches were brought from home. Men carried metal lunch pails with sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. Women packed leftovers or simple meals in brown bags. Children had lunch boxes, not debit cards. Buying lunch every day was unthinkable for most families. It just wasn't how people lived. Because dining out was so rare, it never became a fallback. You couldn't rely on takeout to cover for skipped grocery trips. You had to plan, cook, and sit down to eat. And when you controlled the kitchen, you controlled the ingredients, the portions, the schedule, everything. Restaurant food was also richer, heavier in fat, salt, and sugar. But when you only had it once a month, it didn't matter. The problem wasn't the food, it was how often we started relying on it. Back then, the home kitchen wasn't just where you ate, it was where life happened. The stove, the table, the smell of something simmering, it was all part of a rhythm that kept people grounded, nourished, and balanced. Looking back, it wasn't that people were stronger or more disciplined, it's just that life didn't offer constant shortcuts. And maybe that's what made it all work. They didn't count calories, they didn't fear fat, they simply lived in rhythm, with real food, real movement, and real connection. If these memories stirred something in you, tell us, what do you remember most about eating in the 1960s? And if you enjoyed the trip back, like, share, and subscribe for more from Dear Old America.